Hi, this is Jill from Fabric Garden, and this video is for the people doing the Words to Live By block of the month with us here at the shop or in your home remotely. So this is for month 2. Last month we talked about creating a binder to organize your pattern. So I've got my binder, I've put in the cover, and I have started sorting, putting my patterns in. And I was going to show you, I've got month 2 on the table here, but I've got my month 3 cut and I've slid it into my sleeve. So I like to keep it as contained as possible before I sew it so I don't lose any of my pieces. So I hope you've got your binder or some sort of organization going for the block of the month. After the last video, I put all my pieces fully together. So there is month 1, all done. And hopefully you aren't too far from this also, because it really doesn't take too long once you're cut to sew this all together. So I wanted to talk about construction of month 2. So I better get my binder again with the pattern. And so I have typed up, you've got your pattern instructions, but your kit will also contain a supplemental sheet of paper that will have alternative cutting instructions for if you want to use your Tucker trimmer for trimming, and if you want to use the Studio 180 design square in a square ruler for making your square in a square. So these are my 2 favorite ways to make these units. That's how I made mine. You can follow the directions exactly as it is in the pattern, or you can follow the alternative cutting guide and directions and use the trim tools. So we will be making for block 3. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. We're going to be making a turn dash style block. So I am going to start with making this combination unit right here. Let me pull one out. So your combination unit is going to look like that. And I'm going to tell you how I made my unit. So I followed the instructions in the pattern and I made 4 half square triangles just as the pattern said. At this point, the pattern asked me to trim this unit to 3.5 inches. But when I looked and I saw that we were going to be adding another square and sewing it and flipping it, I know that flip and sew method doesn't always give me a really nice square. So what I did is I cut these squares, instead of cutting them 3.5 inches, I cut them 4. So as you can see, 4 was a little bit too big, but I wasn't sure what that exact size was going to be when I was cutting, and I figured bigger was better. So I just you can put any old ruler on. I lined up the ruler with my block that I made, and I trimmed these pink squares to measure the same size as this half square triangle. Once I did that, I marked a diagonal line through the triangle, and when I laid that on right sides together, I made sure that the line was perpendicular to the seam. So there's the seam in the block, and I put the line this way. Now we're not going to stitch a 1/4 of an inch on either side of the line. We're actually stitching right on the line. So we're going to stitch on the line, and I've done that. And now the pattern calls for us to cut off one side of this so that when you flip it open, you will have this unit. So we're basically going to cut off one side of this. And the trick here is take your time. You need to use the picture in your pattern. You need to set it up to look just like the picture in the pattern, with the flower at the bottom, the gold at the top. You've stitched on the line. Now this is the side you're trimming off, just like the picture. This is gonna iron and flip over, and you want it to look exactly like this picture here. And you want 4 units that look exactly like this. If you trim the wrong side, you will have a mirror image, and so you're not going to get quite the same look to your block. So important to really look at your picture, double check it, maybe even triple check it before you trim one side off. So I have done that, and where's my unit? Oh, there it is. So there it is, just as I made it. Carol's gonna keep the camera on that, and I'm gonna grab a rotary cutter to trim it for you. So last month we talked about trimming hourglass units with the Tucker trimmer, and how the Tucker trimmer has this bias line and then it has perpendicular lines. We want this to be 3.5 inches. I'm going to set the bias line on my long seam, and then there's a dashed line labeled 3.5 inches, and I'm going to put that on this secondary bias seam. And once I have that all lined up, I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to trim off 2 sides. Okay, I might need a new blade. Then I'm going to flip it over, and again, now I'm lining up the bias line again, the secondary bias line, and I'm also double checking that my 3.5 inch dash lines match up to where I just trimmed. And when everything's all lined up nicely, I'm going to trim. I think it's the fact that there is a quilt under my cutting mat, so it's not firm. It's not right on a table.
It's also the blade.
Yes. So anyway, look at that. Now it's perfect. So by waiting to trim it until I've got the whole unit made, now I have a perfect square, no droopy corners, and it's perfect. So that will be, the directions for that will be in your extra cutting guide that I've typed up for you that will go in your kit. Again, you're welcome to follow the directions exactly as are in the pattern, or for a little more precision quilting, follow the directions that I've included. So the rest of the block is very easy. We are just going to you're going to cut out a plain center square, and then you're going just to make 4 rails. Very simple, straightforward sewing. So once you've done that, you will be able to construct your block. So let's move on to block 4. And block 4, we're going to be making square in a square units. And in the pattern, she is using the flip and sew method, where you cut 1 square 3.5 inches, and then you put on 4 flip and fold corners. Again, not my favorite method. I always find I draw that diagonal line, I sew on it, and when I fold the corner up, it's not quite perfect. So I really love, for this particular unit, the Studio 180 square in a square tool. So the cutting for this, again, will be in your kit if you want to use this tool, but the ruler has a corner for trimming, for cutting the center square of the square in a square. So I used the center square for 3-inch finished blocks, and I cut the center square for the blocks. And then right on the ruler, it has directions for what size to cut the triangles. So this is a 3-inch finished block, so I cut these squares 2 3/4, and I cross cut them once to get the triangles that I need to make the block. Now, the square is precision cut. That is the precise piece for this ruler. The triangles are oversized. So to start out, I sew on the 2 opposite sides. And the nice thing with these triangles being oversized is I do not have to find the center of the triangle or the center of the block. I just have to take my triangle, put it on, and just eyeball it. I just hold it up and make sure it looks kind of centered, and then I sew it. I like to sew it with the triangle down because the square is my precision piece, so I want to make sure my 1/4 inch is from the square, that I didn't accidentally get that triangle up too high and now I'm not going to be precise. So I sew on 2 sides, I sew on the other 2 sides, and now I've got a square and a square. And you can see that the 1/4 inches are all oversized here. So this ruler, I find I'm going to make the binder here, the 3-inch block for it. And there are these little X's labeled for the 3 inches, and they line up. Each X lines up with a point, and then I can trim 2 sides off, and then I flip it. I line up just like I did before, but I now also have the lines that I already cut. I line up also. That keeps everything nice and square. Trim the 2 sides, and now I have this beautiful square in a square. It's kind of funny, this fabric with the print on it, it may look like it's not quite perfectly square, but it is. It's just the print on the fabric has a lot of movement. But that makes my square in a square absolutely perfect. It's absolutely, there's no ziggy-zaggies on the side. When I sew this on, I'm not going to lose any of my points. And I will make 4 of the black and gold, and then the center square will have the flowers and the black. So I will trim those all when I go to put this together. And then for the rest of the block, you're just going to make half square triangles like we did before. Cutting exactly per the pattern, sewing, cutting it in half, and again, using my Tucker trimmer to trim these to 3.5 inches. So I'm putting my line on the bias. I am looking to make sure that the 3.5 inch dashed lines here, that my block is still bigger than that, because I need to trim all 4 sides. So I trim the first 2. Okay, and turn it over. Line everything up again. Trim the other 2 sides. And now I have a perfect 3.5 inch half square triangle, and I will make 4 of those, and I will have everything I need for block 4. If you need to refer back to the first video, you will be trimming 2 more 9.5 inch blocks from your panel, and I did go over that in month 1. So you will be trimming the Everyone Belongs and the rainbow for this one. So if you have any questions about these tools, we do carry these here in the shop, along with the magic wand that we like to use that I talked about in month 1. And if you have any questions about making the blocks while you're sewing, give us a call, 916-483-2955. Almost gave you my home number, guys. And if you can also visit our website at www.fabricgardenquiltshop.com. There's still time to get a full quilt kit of this. We've already cut our monthly kits, but if you're interested in sewing along with us, we can still cut a full kit for you to work from. Thank you very much.